Welcome to Tabo, eminent channel in Ellicott Mills, Maryland. President Andrew Jackson boards a Baltimore and Ohio Railroad train for a pleasure trip to Baltimore. Jackson, who had never been on a train before, was the first president to take a ride on the Iron Horse, as locomotives were known then. The steam locomotive was first pioneered in England at the beginning of the 19th century by Richard Trevithick and George Stephenson. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad began operation in 1828 with horse-drawn cars, but after the successful run of the Tom Thumb, a steam train that nearly outraced a horse in a public demonstration in 1830, steam power was added. By 1831, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad had completed a line from Baltimore to Frederick, Maryland. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel. 2 years later, Andrew Jackson gave railroad travel its presidential christening. The acceptance of railroads came quickly in the 1830s, and by 1840, the nation had almost 3,000 miles of railway, greater than the combined European total of only 1,800 miles. The railroad network expanded quickly in the years before the Civil War, and by 1860, the American railroad system had become a national network of some 30,000 miles. 9 years later, transcontinental railroad service became possible for the first time. President Jackson rides the Iron Horse on a warm June day in 1833. President Andrew Jackson stood before a curious crowd at Ellicott Mills, Maryland. The scent of coal smoke lingered in the air as the metallic hulk of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad's steam locomotive hissed and chugged, waiting impatiently. This strange contraption, dubbed the Iron Horse, had already begun reshaping the landscape of America, linking distant towns, shrinking the vastness of the frontier, and heralding a new industrial age. Now, the president himself had come to see what this machine could do. Jackson, a man of the frontier and no stranger to bold innovations, eyed the steam engine with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Though already in his mid-60s and in declining health, the aging war hero and populist president climbed aboard, joined by a small party of aides and dignitaries. As the train lurched to life, the iron wheels gripping the tracks with purpose, the passengers swayed and gripped their seats, adjusting to a sensation unfamiliar to most Americans: speed without horses. The ride lasted only a short distance, perhaps just a few miles, but it marked a symbolic crossing into a new era. Trees and fields blurred past the windows as Jackson sat quietly, absorbing the rhythm of the rails. He had seen America change in his lifetime, from a fledgling republic to a sprawling, ambitious nation. Now, with steam power hissing beneath him and iron tracks stretching into the horizon, Jackson was witnessing a future that promised to connect people faster than ever before. When the ride ended and the Iron Horse came to a steaming halt, Jackson disembarked to applause. Though not known for being easily impressed, he offered rare words of admiration for the machine. His presence that day lent legitimacy to a technology that would, in a matter of decades, transform America's economy, culture, and geography. That short ride may have seemed modest at the time, but in hindsight, it was a turning point, a moment when the old America of dirt roads and horse-drawn wagons tipped its hat to the roaring, smoke-belching future. And at its center was a reluctant yet watchful witness, President Andrew Jackson, the first president to ride the Iron Horse. President Jackson rides the Iron Horse. Extended story. The year was 1833, and the United States stood on the edge of great transformation. Towns were beginning to grow into cities, canals were carving new trade routes across the land, and a strange new machine, powered not by muscle but by steam, was catching the attention of innovators and skeptics alike. Among those watching the tide of change was President Andrew Jackson, the fiery and resolute leader known for his populist vision and unflinching will. Jackson had never been one to shy away from bold ideas. A general in the War of 1812 and a man of the Tennessee frontier, he had always prided himself on being in step with the common people. But now, the people were changing. Commerce was speeding up, and rumors of a railroad, a road made of iron, where a fire-breathing engine pulled cars full of passengers, were spreading like wildfire. Though Jackson was skeptical of Wall Street and wary of unchecked banking power, he was curious about the promise of technology. And so, on June 6, 1833, he accepted an invitation to ride the new Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. The president arrived at Ellicott's Mills in Maryland to find a crowd already assembled, their faces alight with anticipation. Before them stood the Iron Horse, a steam locomotive unlike anything most of them had ever seen. Its black body gleamed in the sunlight, its smokestack puffing plumes of coal smoke skyward. Its wheels rested heavily on shining steel tracks, a physical symbol of progress. Jackson stepped toward the train slowly, his gait stiffened by age and illness, but his eyes sharp with curiosity. As he climbed aboard the car, he was joined by Vice President Martin Van Buren and a small party of government officials. Inside, the wooden benches were polished and the windows framed the passing countryside like moving paintings. The whistle shrieked, the engine growled, and suddenly they were off. The train ride was brief but breathtaking. It surged forward with a strength Jackson had never experienced, pulling them over hills and along valleys at what seemed a fantastic speed. Trees zipped by, the wind rushed in through open windows, and the rhythm of steel wheels on track filled the air like a mechanical drumbeat. For a moment, Jackson sat silently, his mind racing faster than the train itself. This invention could shrink a continent, bring distant communities into contact, and unlock the wealth of the vast interior. It was no longer just a machine, it was a vision of the future. When the train finally pulled to a stop, Jackson stepped down carefully and turned to look once more at the locomotive. It hissed and exhaled like a living creature, resting after its labor. The president didn't speak much, but his presence had already said enough. In riding the Iron Horse, Jackson had done more than take a trip. He had endorsed the age of steam with the weight of his office. In the years that followed, railroads would crisscross the nation, stitching the East to the Midwest, and eventually to the Pacific. The journey Jackson took that day was short, but its impact echoed across decades.